inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.
What's up, guys? We are live. Welcome to the show. We are here to discuss what Luis Elizondo's new book that's out today, Imminent. And I've got a couple special guests to join me to go over this book. But before I bring them in, let me just tell you, we're also going to be covering a couple of other topics in the live stream today. So not only are we going to be looking over Luis Elizondo's book and kind of previewing it, talking about it, I've got some clips. We're also going to be going over a gentleman that made some interesting comments on Twitter that's kind of spreading through the community. His name is Harold Malgren. Okay. And I've got some information on him, as well as Kevin Day. Okay. He kind of made a splash in the community yesterday as well. And he is a witness from the Nimitz encounters, right? The 2004 Nimitz, David Fravor, the Tic Tac video, if you will. So without further ado, let me bring in a couple of my favorite people. Okay. Welcome, boys. We got Pavel and Clint from Psicoactivo and Nightshift, respectively. Welcome, gentlemen.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Patrick. Hey, Clint. How you guys doing?
What's up, guys?
Clint and Pavel have not met each other before, so this is cool, guys. They get to meet for the first time right here in front of y'all.
It's an honor.
It
History.
is. Indeed.
This is history. Right. Screenshot it, people. Okay. Because this is it. Yes. Look, as a tradition that we always do, guys, before we jump into this, I like to shout out where we're from and then have everyone that's watching tell us in the comments where they're watching from. So I'm in Texas. Pavel, where you at?
Tijuana,
Mexico. That's what I'm talking about, man. And then Clint, where you at, brother?
I'm actually in Florida, believe it or not.
Wow, Florida.
Florida. 2,000 degrees and 800% humidity.
hurricane season is about to start, right?
It's already started. It never ends. It's just 24/7, 365 now.
Dude, it never ends. Okay, let's see here. Let me get to the comments. Let me shout out some of these. Ireland, Arkansas, New Jersey, Dublin, Lancashire, Knoxville, Texas again, Scotland, Poland, India, Blackpool, UK, Mississippi, Seattle, Holland, Michigan, Florida again, Sweden, oh my God, France, San Francisco, Norway, Georgia, Chicago, another Georgia, Bakersfield, California, Utah, Detroit, Liechtenstein, Charlotte, Minnesota, Canada, Montreal, holy cow, Maine, Brazil, oh, beautiful, Ohio, the moon, wow, reception must be good, Germany, Budapest, Liverpool, Bahamas, I don't know, is that real? Are you really in the Bahamas? If you are, I'm jealous. Boise, Idaho, Tulsa, Catskills, oh, reminds me of that Beck song. Croatia, Toronto, Johannesburg. Look at that, Devon, France. Isn't that crazy, guys? Look at this from all over the world, man. Isn't that nuts? It blows my mind every time I do this. Like, holy cow, people are coming from all over. Anybody in Australia, y'all? Come on. I think the time is bad. It's like 4 a.m. in Australia. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
Belgium, Los Angeles, Miami. Look, can you guys see the chat?
I've got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you guys call out some of those while I do this quick thing on Discord? Call out some of those places there.
And Aussie just said, the caveman Aussie here says.
He's there.
Aussie here. Oh, the caveman. We got Kalamazoo, Michigan.
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Kurdistan.
Yorkshire. Mars. What the hell?
Fresno in the house. Los
Niagara
Angeles.
Falls. Niagara Falls. That's cool. Must be wet.
Portugal.
Devon, UK.
Okay, here we go. All right.
Argentina.
Nice. Argentina. Shout out to the chat or to the mods too that are out there. Let me shout them out. We got Daniel Brookers, Jessica Heiser, Allie, Justin. Thank you guys. Without them, y'all, none of this is possible to do these live streams or the live premieres. So thank you to them for hanging out and for everyone watching. Look at that, South Africa. DIY Camo Guy says, real quick, I'll bring this up. I asked Lou for live books of info. I think that's what we're saying. Oh, his opinion of Bob Lazar on the existence of S4. We'll see. Okay. I bet he'll talk about that. So don't be discouraged, DIY Camo Guy. That's a good question. Real quick, before we jump into this book, yesterday, oh God, this is going to be hilarious. Yesterday, I asked people on Discord real quick if they could help me with something. Let me read it here, boys. Okay, how do I bring that up? Okay, right here. Okay,
Get ready for screenshots.
Get ready, Clint. You're involved too, brother. You don't even know what I did. All right, so I said I posted on the Discord yesterday when I found out that Clint and Pavel were going to be joining me. So this is just for fun, guys, before we jump into the book. And I said, this is what I said. I said, I know this is last minute, but can anyone make an Avenger-style picture with me as Iron Man, Pavel as the Hulk, and Clint from Nightshift as Captain America? The reason I ask, Pavel and Clint are joining me for a live stream tomorrow for Lou's book release. I want to use that as the thumbnail. I will, of course, give credit. No pressure. Never asked for anything like this. Just thought I would throw it out there. Just DM me if you want. Need it today. ASAP. Again, I realize it's last minute, and I tagged everyone, and some people got to work, y'all. I got it a little late, so I couldn't use it as a thumbnail, but we are definitely showing these. Some people put in hard work, and I want everyone to see some of this. So people were like, ask, you got pictures. What do you want? What do we want this to look like? Even Pavel's putting up pictures. Look at that. That's Pavel. That's Pavel at 11. He's 11 years old right there, y'all.
I was 20. I was 20.
Oh, 20. Okay, my bad. There's Pavel right there. He's also 11 in this picture. It's weird. I don't know what's going on. No, just kidding. That's a good picture, Pavel, by the way. Perfect for this. So, okay, look, I promise people started to put up some stuff. Look, there's Todd here, got to work. That's Pavel as Wolverine. I don't know why. That's good, right? Some of those are good. I threw up some pictures so they could use something. They said, people were like, oh, there's no pictures of you. I'm like, there's thousands of hours of video of me on the internet. What do you mean there's no pictures of me? Those are good too. Oh man, look at this one.
That's awesome.
Dude, look at that one. That one really does kind of look like Pavel, dude. Todd did a good job. This one is hilarious. Look at that. Me as Iron Man. Bro, I look like I'm in Wonder Woman. Like I'm one of the you know what I'm saying? Like it just looks so feminine. I love it. I don't know what's happening here. It looks like I got a couple testicles hanging on the table.
What?
Dude, this is my favorite one, y'all. It's just
put that on a t-shirt,
bro. This is my favorite one just because it's so janky. It's just like, you know what I mean?
It's got heart, though. It's got heart.
It's got heart, y'all. It's exactly what I wanted, though. Kind of that layout, all three of us together. Pavel looming over us. I just love it, dude. Like it's perfect. The V there in the middle. Yeah, that's definitely my favorite one. Here's me as Iron Man. I look like I don't know. I look like Latin, like I am Latin, but I look like a weird, like a different, like a Cuban. Like I don't know. It looks look at Pavel there. Wow. Dude, this kind of Hulk I dig.
70s Pavel.
Look at this. Look at Clint here. AI Clint.
That's good.
Captain America. That's good, right?
Someone send me that. That's good.
Yeah, dude. No. We'll send you
Put
these.
that on LinkedIn.
Look at that. Dude.
That's great.
Chops. They got the chops on there too for you. Looks
I love
good,
it.
dude. Yeah, those are good. This fucking I'm apparently I'm like in some lava land. I don't know what's going on here with my face. I look totally demonic in taking
I think
over.
you're trying to make a difficult buying decision.
Yeah, look at this. I don't even know what's going on there. This one's kind of funny too. Again, I really like the copy and paste, although they did a good job on this one, sliding that in there. So shout out to Slider. Yeah, see, look, they had a blast making them. Yeah, these are funny. That's supposed to be me as Wolverine, I think, right? Or is that still Pavel? I don't even know.
I think that's a combination of you and Wolverine.
Yeah, it got that one was funny.
Yeah,
This one's
that's you.
kind of, dude, that's good.
Yeah.
That looks good, dude. Yeah, they did good. Okay, and then one more that I'll show real quick that Todd sent me here.
That was really cool.
It's got the names down here. I'll send that.
Can we
to
get
you
these
guys.
action figures?
Dude, that's what it
Or
looks
just
like,
a
right?
bobblehead.
Like
It
little
looks like a bobblehead. If I can.
Hey,
You know
Hot Toys, are you listening right now?
hot toys, baby. No, he did a good job because it really does look like you, Pavel, Clint. That I look like Antonio Banderas a little bit, don't I? Right there.
You kind of do, actually.
That's what I see in that. Anyway, so thank you to everyone who did that. I appreciate that for everyone that took the time and threw that out there. Thank you. Now, what we're really here for, y'all. Years. People have been waiting years for this. Okay, for this book right here to come out. Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, Imminent, Luis Elizondo. What do y'all think? What's y'all's first reactions to, the book? Whatever. You read a little bit or listened just a little bit. What do you think? Let's just get some quick impressions and then we'll jump in.
Clint,
Pavel, take it
you
away.
first.
Oh, okay. Clint, you first.
I've got the audio book this morning. I'm about 30 minutes into it. So I got through the intro and Chris Mellon's forward, which I thought was interesting. I like the first couple of minutes. They play some loose clues with the name of the book, and he's like, "Why did I choose to call it Imminent?" I don't know. I'll have to read it to find out. But there's, what does it mean to you? I thought that was kind of interesting. And then in the forward, Chris Mellon writes this whole setup where he gets into he really leans into the national security implications. They kind of frame it like nobody had a clue any of this was going on until just recently. And that was a little weird for me. But his biggest thing, I think he compares it to like the security lapses, intelligence lapses that happened between Pearl Harbor or before Pearl Harbor and 9/11. And he makes a really keen point of like pointing that out. He's like, just before Pearl Harbor, a bunch of people were acting like this, like nothing was there. There's nothing to see. And just before 9/11, the same thing. So they're kind of setting it up. I'm very interested to see the rest of the book, but they're setting it up to be kind of dark. It's kind of off onto a dark foot there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well said. What do you think, Pavel?
I bought it. I got it last night, and I've been on it for like 4 hours since 5 a.m. I woke up. I just started the Tic Tac chapter, and I think that I've been talking about this for a little while. These government agencies, these three-letter agencies, have shown repeatedly over the last few years that we've been talking about this, that they are very inept. It's not like they have like a bad intention, all of them, I know that there are some secluded groups that do have these secrets and they don't want to share them with anybody else, but the intelligence agencies are filled with a lot of people who do want to work in there just to serve, but the people that want to climb up, all they care about is just listening to orders from either the president or whoever, and I think that this book is a major example of how inept these agencies can be. That's what I've gathered so far of what I've read, because I haven't gotten into the whole remote viewing and woo stuff. That's like the second half of the book, I think. And that's what I've gathered so far. And it's a very personal story for Lou. He talks about his family, these orbs that were in his house. That's very interesting to me. But yeah, I'm very compelled to keep reading it right after we finish this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, y'all. Look, this don't pay attention to my phone almost dying up there when I took a screenshot of this, but people couldn't find this apparently, and I'm just going to share it here, but you got to get it yourself. But when you get the audiobook, you get this little PDF that comes with it, that gives you like some pictures and different things that he goes over. I thought that was kind of cool, sort of an accompaniment, right? So please, if you get the audiobook, don't forget to look for that PDF as well. You might miss it basically. Although in the audiobook, it's one of the first things, pardon me, that Lou says, hey, there's a PDF, don't forget about it. But just in case, this is it. And for some of you that may not be able to get it, here you go. You can screenshot this. Not a big deal. It's just stuff that goes with it. So we're not really going to go over this stuff, but I just wanted people to see. It's got some emails in there, stuff redacted, feels very cool. Just feels very like clandestine, Cloak and Dagger. Ooh, redactions. I'm just going to start redacting stuff, period, just for no reason, just normal stuff.
Like emails and stuff.
Yeah, just email, just for no reason. So there it is, y'all. Okay, everyone got the screenshots. All right. Look, the first thing I'm going to do is play a little clip here, y'all, from one of the chapters. Okay, it's called Biological Remains, and that is the one that intrigued me the most. And I couldn't wait to find out what that was. So I kind of skipped ahead here and listened to this. But as a teaser, okay, I'm going to play just a part of this. A chapter here, okay? But again, there's a link in the description. I get zero money from it. Go buy the book, get it however you want, audiobook, digital version, hard copy, paperback. I don't know what else is out there, tablet, whatever. Okay. All right. Where is it? Right here. Okay, y'all.
11. Biological Remains. Several of the senior officials I worked with eventually told me that when one of my colleagues worked at the CIA some decades earlier, he was given an official report/autopsy of the dissection of a non-human body that was recovered from an unspecified crashed UAP. This colleague asked me not to use his name. The report stated that the brain had no convolutions, the wrinkled exterior portion of the brain. Rather, what was described was a smooth surface similar to lower functioning animals here on Earth. It also described a conjoined gut and liver and a 3-chambered heart like reptiles. The author of the autopsy came to the conclusion the cadaver did not appear to have the requisite brain capacity to design and create aircraft capable of such stunning maneuverability. It was postulated that it might be some sort of biological automaton created by something else with a greater intellect. In that era at the CIA, brain/neuroanatomical science considered smooth exterior brain surfaces to be indicative of an extremely low animal intelligence, incapable of tool-making, no sophisticated communication capability beyond sight, smell, or pheromones, and primitive vocal noises, and no high-level cognition. Let me emphasize that this is what was told to me at the time. As you will soon hear, that thinking later changed. Eric and some of our other colleagues were familiar with TRW's rumored crash retrieval program run out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and they shared this view based on the recoveries. For background, TRW has long been a major U.S. defense contractor and was eventually purchased by Northrop Grumman, another major defense contractor. Credible sources, including those involved at ATIP, told me the facts from several historic UAP crashes from which non-human bodies were recovered by the United States in addition to the Roswell crash. Among the significant early crash retrievals was one deceased non-human body recovered in December 1950 in Ciudad Acuña, Mexico, across the Rio Grande from Del Rio, Texas. Again, in 1989, 4 deceased non-humans were also allegedly recovered from a crash of a large tic-tac in Kazakhstan, Soviet Union. Meanwhile, The opinion from decades ago about brains was recently proven wrong when numerous studies of all kinds of animals demonstrated that animal species having smooth exterior brain surfaces do have complex communication techniques, do make tools, and teach their young how to use them, and do use math and geometry to communicate with mates. Certain fish do this, or form sophisticated mental models of nature surrounding them. Even bees have sophisticated social hierarchical societies with high-level communication and aviation navigation methods and mental mapping, etc. So, life forms with smooth brain surfaces can be high-functioning. You have to admire this.
All right, so look, I'm not going to play the whole chapter there, but wanted to give everyone a preview of that. So that's what it sounds like if you get the audiobook. I recommend it because it's like a private conversation between you and Lou, but he's the only one talking. And it's just like he's talking in your ear. Like, I actually love the way they recorded it. Like, it's great. He did a good job. Chris Mellon does the forward. It's like 27 minutes, right? It's like right. So, and
Pretty
this
long.
book is like 10 hours. So you're getting like this 10-hour private podcast from Lou. I really recommend the audiobook. It's really, really good. And again, that's basically what, the quality you get, and you get that PDF with it. So again, link in the description, go check it out. There's many ways to get it, but the audiobook's kind of cool because he does it. If you listen to other audiobooks, it's not the person doing it normally, right? Like, not at all. So kind of cool. Makes it a little extra special. Yeah. What are some thoughts just on that when y'all hear that, about these bodies, the brain, the heart chambers, just them finding bodies, right? And even going past, there have been sort of studies about it and doctorate, right? Like it's sort of past the line of have there been bodies. This takes it further, right? This goes into the details of what's been done supposedly with some of these bodies. So curious. Clint, we'll start with you again, man. What do you think?
I think it's interesting. Now, again, I'm only like 30, 40 minutes into the book. So
Yeah.
I've gotten, just the first taste of how it's going to go. But what I picked up from the beginning is that the way that Chris Mellon frames it in the foreword is sort of like, no one was looking at this. No one in the military, nobody in the intelligence services had any idea this was going on except for like a few people. And they would talk about it in whispers behind closed doors, and it was really weird. And I came on the scene. This is the sort of the way that I'm reading the setup. Me and Lou, and we kind of came on the scene and we said, this is a real problem. We all need to look at it. And then we got this movement in motion to get this on people's radar. But then what we just listened to is completely opposite that. Lou is telling you the CIA not only has looked at it, but they've got data on it. They've got tons of data. They've been autopsying bodies. And he's telling you that TRW has a sophisticated crash retrieval and recovery operation that they can deploy at any time in partnership with the United States military. I have a hard time believing both of those things can be true at the same time. Either they know and they knew what was going on, or they didn't know, and this is all one big, gigantic, story that we're just telling each other. I happen to believe personally that these types of operations have an enormous logistical footprint. And there has to be a lot more data on who's involved in these programs, what they're doing. It's not just like 5 guys going out to pick up a UFO. It's like 600 people in gigantic aircraft. And like, you'd be able to see it on from satellites, these operations. So I have a hard time with that. I don't know what I think about it. And I think the book right now at this stage is just framing the conversation and trying to basically set it up. So for me, that's kind of where my head's at.
I like that. What's up, man? Pavel, what do you think, man?
It's not 5 guys, but it may be the 5 eyes, dude.
The Five Eyes burgers and fries.
So, I think they have so much. If Disneyland, just for an example, Disneyland has such a capability of organizing and making such great things, and they're just an amusement park. Mm-hmm. Imagine what the 5 eyes can do together just to conceal something like this happening. When the shoot downs happened last year in February, they covered it pretty well. I mean, there were some videos that we saw that were like, we didn't know if they were true or not, or if they were from that time or not. They covered it pretty well. I mean, and there were 3 of them. It wasn't just, aside from the Chinese spy balloon, there were another 3, and we haven't gotten a peep out of what happened back then. and it's been a year.
But wasn't the one was way up north? I mean, it was in the frozen tundra, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they couldn't recover it because it was too far away. Yeah,
that's what they said.
Yeah.
Do you think that they did, or do you think they're being honest?
This is something that I keep going back and forth with both Christian and Patrick. I honestly think that there are two phenomena going on with what we see in the sky. One thing is what Chris Bledsoe is seeing, these orbs. And another thing could be potentially military tech. Because I saw David Morehouse on Danny Jones's podcast a while ago, and he was talking about military tech that is very secret. And he showed like graphics and everything of stuff that I'd never seen before. So of course they have military tech that has capabilities we have no idea about. And of course they're going to deny it. It's within their contracts to deny.
This just brings up another interesting point about the military tech, because that puts this sample you just played, Patrick, puts Elizondo firmly on the opposite side of this Tic Tac conversation from Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer says those are ours, like they're just coming out of a test facility somewhere here. And here's Lou saying, well, we know that they were bodies, non-human bodies inside. That's a completely different story, and that tracks with sort of the weirdness between those two that's been going on for a while. And I also noticed there was an interesting thing that Chris Mellon said in the forward, where he said, in the early days when we were first looking at this, we either thought it either could be foreign technology, a foreign adversary, our own technology, or it's not made here on Earth. But what he didn't go into, and seems to get lost a lot, is there's another option. Like, it doesn't have to be American military technology. It can just be private technology.
Sure.
I mean, a corporation can just make their own shit. They don't have to get involved with Congress, and they don't have to ask the military. They just do this on their own. How do we know that's not happening?
Well, look, you do bring up a good point, and we're going to move on to this next part. But before we do, I like that point, and it just hit me as you said that, which is, okay, you get a technology, right? Something, a ship, a craft, something, right? And then the conversation becomes, well, we don't know if it's man-made or advanced tech or private tech or foreign, or but what about a body? How do you get that confused with, is this right? There is no, it's either human or not. Like, there is no, does that make sense? Like, that's a very different line than the line of some sort of craft or something where we get confused about what it is and where it comes from, or a piece of metal or whatever. Does that make sense? But like a body, that hello, that's a pretty definitive. So when the conversation goes there, to me, the conversation is way different. When you're talking biological remains, which is why I think maybe even Lou named a chapter that, right, to separate it from everything else, because it has a different line, a different standard here, and what it could be confused for or not. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. It's pretty black and white to me. But regardless, great points that y'all are bringing up. Let's go to this next part in the book. Again, just a teaser here of a particular part in the book. And this story is fascinating. Now, after this, I'm going to play a clip from Bryce Zabel. So stick around here. To everyone watching, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check out Pavel and Clint's channels. Clint is at Nightshift. You'll find the link in the description. Pavel's with Psicoactivo. He also does work on Down to Earth with Christian Harloff. So let's jump in. Here we go, y'all. Right here. Shout out to Mike Colangelo on Twitter. This is from chapter 9, Into the Void. Okay. And it talks about this particular story. So I'm just going to read just a little excerpt here. All right. I've got more to this story. It says, one day I showed up at work to find that Jay had shared a stunning video via email. The footage was shot by a naval aviator on a routine mission through the cockpit camera, as if over the shoulder. The audio begins with typical jabber and call sign lingo. The pilot is trying to get a visual on what the radar is seeing. Still no visual, says the voice. I am right on it, but still no visual. Another voice over the radio says, it should be right. Just then, a wedge-shaped craft zooms by the cockpit as close as 50 feet. The pilot erupts into several expletives, similar to what you might hear people in the audience of a horror movie utter when a monster or a killer leaps out of hiding. That's interesting. When we slowed down the video frame by frame, it was clear why the pilot was so frazzled. It was not any type of aircraft that we or our enemies have. It was completely alien. So that's an excerpt, again, from Luis Elizondo's book, Chapter 9, Into the Void. Now, hang on, y'all. It gets crazier. So UFO Joe on Twitter put this out. He said, if Lou is able to talk about it, then I assume it's not classified. Seems like what Sheehan was talking about at the 2021 MegaCon conference. Why can't Sheehan see them and not us? So basically, he's saying that Danny Sheehan is talking about the same story, right? This UFO 50 feet just outside the cockpit near this pilot and completely scares the living daylights out of him, right? So apparently, Danny Sheehan talked about this at MegaCon. So I'm going to read this here. Pardon me. It says, UFO Joe, Lou said that there's a pilot that had an encounter 50 feet off the wing of a plane. That's right. This is Sheehan. That's right. And he took photographs of it. The guy took photographs of it. I don't know whether it was his phone or his camera. It probably not his phone because they're not supposed to have them inside the cockpit because there's too much going on. Alan Steinfeld, what would those pictures look like? Sheehan says it looked like a big, huge, like natural gas tank. It was a long tic tac with rounded edges and stuff like that. And it was like 50 feet away. And you could tell he just turned because you can see the interior of the cockpit where he took it. And so these kind of grainy infrared gun camera FLIR videos of them are of secondary value, except that it's got all the logistics data and all that stuff running concurrently. But these photographs of these things, there's another photograph of them through a cockpit window of one of these things flying right in formation. God damn, I can't see. There's a thing over my text there. Right in formation. Oh, with them, they've got two F-18s flying, and here's this other thing flying right along with them. What the hell? This is crazy, right? All right, hang on. UFO Joe says, now, who told you about these photographs, Sheehan? I've seen those, UFO Joe. Even the one that's a tic-tac off the wing, Sheehan. Yes. Alan Stanfield. You saw that through Elizondo? Sheehan. No. UFO Joe. Your own sources, Sheehan. Yeah, I've seen that one. So I know they've got them. So we'll see what's going to happen. Again, this is Sheehan at 2021's UFO MegaCon in Laughlin, I think, which is in Nevada. So that's interesting.
3 years ago.
Yep, exactly. So that's interesting. So again, this story, right? A pilot flying sees a UFO 50 feet away, flying right near him, scares the living daylights out of him. He gets video of it inside the cockpit of this thing. And I guess they took screenshots because they're saying photographs, but they're also talking about a video. Or is it just different photographs lined up? Does that make sense? Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell. What do y'all think? It's kind of hard to. What are y'all's thoughts?
Tic Tac and the wedge is the different craft, though, right? Like, are they talking about the same craft and just describing it differently?
Exactly. I don't know. Yeah, they're talking about the same event, the same moment, but they are describing it differently, right? Sheehan's describing it as a gas tank, right?
Right.
A tic tac, and in Lou's thing, it's a wedge, right? Is that what it was?
Okay, so this is what's interesting to me. We don't hear so much about flying discs anymore. It's like wedges, it's tic tacs, it's a cube with a sphere in it, or a sphere with a cube in it. It's always, lately anyway, a lot of different shapes, which I think is interesting. One, and two, there's a lot of conversation in this book, and the tone of it really lands for me. And I may be reading this into it, but it feels very much like they're like, guys, this is a huge military threat. Like, this is a real serious, like, there's something coming and we need to be, like, title of the book, Imminent. They're always talking about how these things are flying right alongside our fighter jets. We're seeing them every day, all the time. That, you know, the way this conversation is being framed is that this is an enormous national security issue, and we should all be, like, on our game and thinking about it. That's what every time they talk about it, it just keeps coming back to that for me. I don't know if that's how it lands for you guys, but what do you think?
Well, real quick, Pavel, you take it from here. He does say wedge shaped craft, Luis Elizondo, and then Sheehan describes it as a gas tank. I don't know. Maybe that could be the same sort of thing. Looking at, I don't know. Anyway, Pavel, go ahead. Real quick, is wedge shaped? Y'all think like a lime, like a cut lime? Is that what y'all think when you think wedge?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know,
Right.
Clint.
I think of it like there's what's the one called was it the gumdrop? The one that's supposedly at S4, it looks like an arrowhead. Like it made out of granite.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of when I think wedge.
Okay. See, this is why it's interesting to talk about it, right? Because what do people think when they think wedge? All right, Pavel, what were you going to say about all that? The story.
In terms of the feeling that it's a threat, I think that we should be cautious though. But I don't think it's a good idea to go immediately to the threat narrative. I think that if there are more intelligent beings than us flying around nuclear facilities and all that stuff, that is very concerning. But the fact that if they have been existing alongside us for 70, 80 years, and they haven't really attacked like on a global scale or in public, I think that if they wanted to do that, they would have done it already.
Sure.
But we do have to be wary of. I just use that example always. Like when you pass through an ant's nest, you can easily just step on it if you want it, and you just see them and you realize, okay, those are ants. They're important for the ecosystem in a sense, and that's what we understand. I wonder how they see us, because recently there was like a study on Science magazine that said that we have parts of a virus inside of us. So we are partly viruses, the human race. I don't know if they see us that way.
Yeah. I would describe the human race as very parasitic in some ways.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just life in general.
And yeah, of course we would feel threatened if they see us that way, because they would want to eradicate us. But I don't think they see us as a threat per se. And I don't think we should see them completely as a threat, just like a warning sign, like, yeah, they can hurt us, but they're not doing it. They haven't done it in 80 years.
I think it depends on like how they experience time is a big factor too. Cause like you said, it's what do they look at? To them, we might look like plants. We might move so slowly and think so slowly. And if they do have the ability to time travel, which sounds like they do from everything that we've heard, then to them, time is just like a big topographical map. Like they can go anywhere at any time and show up. So they're not really thinking about the flow of time the same way that we are. So when we say 80 years, to them, that might just be like an insignificant unit of time.
And going back to ants, they also see time differently than us. Right. They see us moving extremely slower than they do. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay. Well, you guys bring up some great points, man. Look, let's go to this next part that I have. This is a clip from Bryce Zabel, okay, on Need to Know, who co-hosts with Ross Coulthart. I always get the name wrong, so I hope I'm saying it right now. Ross Coulthart. Okay.
I thought it was very well written. And I understand that Lou wrote it himself and didn't have a ghostwriter. And if that's true, then I just say that man is an excellent communicator when he goes on TV, but he's also an excellent writer. I thought he told a good dramatic story. He didn't bury the lead, but he kept me involved all the way through. So I thought that was great. He does break some news in it. Although I would imagine for most of the people who are listening to our show right now, they know a lot of the things that are already in it. They may not know the specifics or some of the details or whatever, but a lot of it they've been thinking about. It's a really great opening salvo to give to your friends, for example, much as I've given away about 4 copies of your own book, Ross, to people who I thought should, with In Plain Sight, I thought they should read it and sort of get up to speed with this fast-changing topic. A couple of the highlights for me, though, were first, he kind of explains how these things work, which that was news to me, where he's talking about the bubbles. And the bubbles, they say, this is what he said, the bubbles accord around the UAP distorts the way light and other electromagnetic emanations interact with the UAP inside the bubble, which is, pretty interesting. I'm not a physicist, but what it comes down to, the way he describes it, is that you get the saucer shape because you don't want the saucer outrunning its bubble, and a bubble is circular. So that's one bubble. If you have a cigar-shaped thing, or Tic Tac, anyone, you have 2 bubbles, one at each end. And if you have one of those mysterious black triangles running around, you have 3 bubbles, one on each corner. And if you have a super large triangle, you have 4 bubbles, one on each corner and one in the middle. And if you have one of those huge damn boomerangs that people have seen, the ones that are ginormous, then you have 5 bubbles. So, that's kind of interesting stuff to me. And I found that something I wasn't quite clear on. And it means that somehow people within the program understand a lot more about what these things are and how they work than they have let on over the years. Because if this is true, as he points it out, then we're not getting the full story from people who go, yeah, we don't know. Maybe it's ours. Maybe it's China. I don't think China is working on bubbles right now. The other thing he did, Ross, that I thought was very interesting, because I'm passionate about this topic, but he confirms the Roswell story, and almost casually. He doesn't write a chapter about Roswell. He doesn't talk about it in great depth, but he does casually, like 3 or 4 times by my count, just accepts that it's the real deal, and was specific enough to say it was a crash of 2 craft, and they recovered 4 dead bodies. He talked about a couple of other crashes. He said in December 1950 in Ciudad Acuña, Mexico, which is across the Rio Grande from Del Rio, Texas, they got 1 body deceased. And he also said in 1989, there was a large Tic Tac that went down in Kazakhstan in the Soviet Union, and they got 4 deceased bodies. Didn't see anything in the book talking about living beings, so don't know about that. I'm not going to spoil any more of it. Those are my spoilers. I urge people who want to know more. This is a great book. I'm moved by it.
Bam. Bryce Zabel, shout out to him. Great speaker, great show. That's also a great episode to check out as well. Don't forget, Ross has his big interview with Lou Elizondo coming out this Friday on News Nation, and he talked a little bit about it in that interview. Guys, when y'all hear that, what do you think? Right off the bat, Clint, I'm going to throw this to you, because something he said right there at the end real quick. There's no talk of living beings in the book. Now, with your research you've done with Dan Burrish and all of that you've looked into, how does that make you feel? Or what do you think about that? Do you think maybe saving that for another book, or Lou may not know about it, or I don't know, curious.
Oh, again, this is the whole crux of the problem, right? We don't know what information is reliable. We don't know what's been tampered with, and we don't know what we don't know. There's so many unknowns. So whenever somebody comes out with anything, we're just so thrilled that there's new information. We just are like, okay, great. And I think there's a lot of questions, based on what Bryce was just saying. For one, yes, how many species are we dealing with? Is it 1? Is it 10? If you listen to the early John Lear interviews, he said there were 12 or 14 different races. And then I've heard other numbers, it's 3 or 4. And other people who claim to know.
Danny Sheehan says it's 5. And he
Danny Sheehan, okay, and he says, and then Haim Ashed says there's a galactic federation. And that's that's a weird one. So there's a lot of information out there, and we know some of it's real and we know some of it's fake. So we have to assume we can't really assume much. We just have a little bit to work with. I think this is my issue with all of this, that there's so much happening, and what he's describing is these are not small operations. If you recover biologics from a crash site, The number of people you are going to have to call out to that crash site is in the hundreds. It's pilots, it's drivers, it's trained nuclear, biological, chemical people. It's your fast reaction team. It's your security people. It's your perimeter guys. It's like all these guys. There's an enormous logistical footprint to a recovery operation. There has to be. Like, I'm just thinking, like, how is there no fucking paper trail on any of this stuff? It just seems weird to me that they're all like, I don't know, maybe I heard one guy mention it once. And then you hear other people say, oh, no, it's all the time. I've talked to all these people. So I think that's really interesting. And I'm not sure where I fall on that. And then the other thing is we should be careful about what we assume we can and cannot manufacture on our own. Our DARPA people are thinking 50, 60, 70 years ahead. They've got shit on the drawing board. I've seen white papers from the 90s. They were talking about gigantic craft that they were going to build like a balloon almost. But imagine a balloon built in the shape of a boomerang that can hover in the sky and is covered with a skin of
JP
LED.
Aerospace. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And you project anything you want onto it, and it looks ridiculous. It looks like a crazy UFO. But if you don't know what you're looking at, that's what you're going to think. And we also know that they've got things that will generate holograms that look three-dimensional, real solid. Like it could be the size of a football field, but it's actually a projector the size of a Buick, and they're just flying it around projecting this. So it's questionable to me, like how much of this stuff is ours and how much. I know some of it is not ours, but I'd be careful assuming that none of it's ours, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where my head's at.
Yeah, Pavel, what do you think, man?
I was thinking about those bubbles that Bryce Sable was talking about, and I keep thinking about the paper that Dr. Hal Puthoff wrote about the Alcubierre warp drive, and that was in 1994. That was 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
How much more new stuff have they discovered and done since then, from 30 years ago? So yeah, and these bubbles are supposed to be, to those who don't know or haven't checked it out, the first time I saw it was on the Y-Files, on the ARV episode, where they explain
the bubbles. Are you talking about on the corners, those bubbles?
Yeah. Because do you remember when Tom DeLonge showed a video on Rogan of the triangle in Paris?
Yes.
And that it produced a large light bubble and then it just disappeared.
Oh, yes.
That's the principle that they're talking about. And it's supposed to be a bubble that creates a 1G gravity space, and it confines you in there regardless of how fast the craft is moving.
Like Explorers. Remember the movie Explorers with Ethan Hawke?
Like that, yeah.
You know, that's interesting. The Explorers, that bubble. And in the beginning of the book, another thing that Mellon talks about is how the CIA contracted with Disney, of all companies, Disney, to help convince people that there was something else going on and it wasn't UFOs. And you just made me think of Flight of the Navigator, which was their first big CGI movie, big budget. Disney made it, the best of the technology at the time. And what does that ship look like to you? It looks exactly like what we're seeing today. And it's doing the maneuvers that, was it Fravor who said it just dropped down from space and then stopped like a dime right above the ocean, or 10,000 feet or whatever the altitude was? Yeah. That's in the movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weirdness with Disney, man. I think Disney somehow has been like leaking little bits and pieces of some of this stuff out for a long time.
That's so interesting, right? Hollywood's connection. I spoke with Steve Bassett about that on my last interview with him, pretty in depth, of how involved is that, right? Is there soft disclosure in some of this, right, to sort of desensitize you to maybe some of these images, ideas, thoughts, right? Images, right, of different things. Yeah, so that's interesting. Okay,
we're gonna talk about it in a little bit.
What? Oh yeah, that's what I'm moving to right now.
A little bit.
That's exactly what I'm moving to right now. So Pavel kind of knows, Clint may not, which is kind of great because he's going to learn right here. All right, let me bring up the right thing first. Okay, this is what we want to bring up right here. In the acknowledgments of the book, you'll find this little piece at the bottom. It says, Thank you to Dan Farah of Farah Films, who helped make this book happen. I'm also grateful to be featured in Dan's groundbreaking UAP disclosure documentary, which I think will change a lot of minds about this topic. So there's been all this hoopla about this new documentary coming out, Lou's documentary. I've even heard some things, behind the scenes that I don't really check with this, to be honest with you. So that's interesting. But there you go. Dan Farah of Farah Films is going to be producing this groundbreaking UFO documentary. Now you may be asking yourself, who is Dan Farah? Who is this guy? Well, I'm going to tell you, because I actually spoke to Dan Farah on the phone a few years ago. I'm actually going to play a video of that phone call. But before I get to that, which I've never shared before, I've shared clips of it in another video on my other podcast, but I distorted the voice and I didn't say who it was. So now I am. But it's nothing crazy. But it does speak about this potential project years ago. But I didn't know at the time in context what he was talking to me about. So, but before I get to that, let me show you this. This is Dan Farah right here. Okay. Here he is on the set of Ready Player One with Steven Spielberg, and the author of Ready Player One. What's his name? Oh my God. I feel horrible right now that I cannot think of his name. I'm blanking, and I don't mean to. I'm a huge fan of his. By the way, he lives in Austin. Oh my God. Jesus.
Ernest Cline.
Ernest Cline. That's it. So, because Dan Farah was a producer on Ready Player One. Okay. And he's also producer on The Phenomena, which is James Fox's documentary. Right. And he's also a producer on the upcoming The Crow movie that's coming out, right? And he's also producing the Secret Machines, Tom DeLonge's Secret Machines upcoming TV adaptation. Dan Farah is also producing that. And Dan Farah is the guy that set up Luis Elizondo's 60 Minutes interview, right? A long time ago, right? That huge interview. Dan Farah put that together. Dan Farah also put together Lou Elizondo's book deal in a lot of ways, right? And he was his manager. He was Luis Elizondo's manager. So years ago on my other podcast, The Lone Star Plate, I need a sip here. I got to tell a story. On my other podcast, I interviewed other people, right? I was not into UFOs. I interviewed celebrities in Texas and blah, blah, blah. But I was doing a story on, I was into UFOs at that time. So I'd interviewed one ufologist from Texas, and Luis Elizondo has a connection to Texas. So I was like, I want to get him on the show. Right. So, we don't know the UFO community back then. So me and my team back then, I had a person that did outreach and reached out to people. So, but for this one, I was like, oh, I got it. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to normally reach out to people. So I just went on IMDb. And I went to Luis Elizondo's IMDb, and there was a thing because I had IMDb Pro, and I went to the bottom is like contact information for these people, right? So I just email manager. Turns out to be this Dan Farah guy, but I don't know who this is, right? He emails me back. He's like, hey, love your show. Would love to have Luis Elizondo on, but he's not doing any more interviews right now, right? This is when he just stopped doing interviews like a couple years ago. Right. And was getting ready. Supposedly the book was coming out in like 90 days. Okay. At that time. So I email back and forth. He's not going to come on. I email him about something else about Luis Elizondo when I see Stephen Greenstreet's video come out about whatever, kind of turning on Elizondo. Right now, I didn't see it when it premiered. This was months later. Right. When I was, because I wasn't into this stuff that much. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. What's going on this? So I emailed Dan about this. And this is when, and I asked him for like a statement or something. And he was like, email me back something, I forget, and his phone number, and was like, call me. So I called him and I was like, I better record this because I don't know what's about to happen. So this is the conversation that I had, and this is my old studio. You can barely hear Dan a little bit. Okay, so just really kind of pay attention. I noodle all over the place. I'm rambling like I am now. Okay, you can hear me rambling in the call, and nothing crazy. But let's listen.
This is Dan.
Hi, Dan. This is Patrick Armstrong.
Patrick.
Hey, brother. How we doing? I'm so sorry for my email coming across as anything but what it was meant to be, which was just a standard email, nothing crazy. So my apologies, man.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm glad I misread it that way. I took it as you're doing what I want, so I'm gonna make you look like a bad guy in my report.
Oh my gosh, no, I'm not a journalist. I'm a podcaster. We don't do.
You wouldn't believe the insane emails we get because everybody wants to interview Lou, and we have made this polite decision to just not do any new interviews anytime soon. There's a lot of other stuff going on that he's focused on, and we're going to be promoting a book and another top secret project we're involved in at some point in the near future. And the people who email that we think we're interested in talking to at some point, like you, I do politely email back and say, hey, love to interview, just not right now. We'll figure it out down the line. We'll keep in touch,
Sure.
So. But yeah, I definitely, I don't want to be mentioned today. And I'm just going to get, all that's going to lead to is a bunch of fucking lunatics, thinking I'm some sort of, hurdle to them hearing what they want to hear. And I'm going to start getting fucking weird threats and shit,
No, for sure.
Dude, I don't need any of that.
Yeah, no. I get it. I've had that happen to me myself already doing podcasts. If you cover a certain topic or whatever, there's communities out there that take certain things seriously. This is one of them. We've never done anything on the UFO community. This is our first foray. We did do an episode into
the
it.
truth is, if anything, I'm helping that community probably more than any outsider possibly has. I'm the guy who put together the historic CBS 60-minute segment that Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo, we're in. It's now probably the most significant thing that's happened to the topic.
Sure, I saw it.
Multiples of the people that read the New York Times article watched that.
Oh yeah.
And I'm the guy who helped Louis get his big book deal and helping them with a lot of other stuff. So if anything, I'm helpful to the group, but I don't need my name out there.
Yeah. We have a username at all, dude.
Cool.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Well, look, how do you talk about him in that thing? I don't have time to watch it or listen to it.
Well, the full transparency, there was a video that came out on the New York Post from the basement office, some reporter named Stephen Greenstreet. I watched this video. It was compelling to some extent, and that's what we questioned. It's only one part of our video, our episode. It's called The Basement Office. I don't know. I guess you haven't seen that or heard about it.
I've heard of this guy, but what is the video? He's basically, that guy, by the way, is he's just Mr. Negative about everything. So I don't know, but what did it say?
I don't know him personally, so I don't have a personal opinion on the guy, but he basically is saying there's some inconsistencies in Mr. Elizondo's story. He points out, or he claims, right? So he points out these different points, right? It's like a 45-minute video. And in our video, we bring up a bit of that and say to look into that, right? Keep your mind open. Are the people in the UFO community people that we can trust? Again, I'm new to all this. I don't know any of this stuff. So when I started researching...
I wouldn't go, I'll give you good tips since you're new in this community. I wouldn't go and be the guy who even remotely suggests that anything that guy says is real or should be questioned, because it just goes against all facts. Senator Harry Reid, when this guy started spreading those rumors online that Lou wasn't a real guy and didn't want free tip, it got so ridiculous that Senator Harry Reid, before he died, who's one of the most respected senators of all time, went out and was the guy who was the politician behind ATEP, the UFO program.
Yeah, yep.
He went out and made a public statement in writing on his stationery, backing up Lou and everything Lou has done. I'll send you the link right now. And that pretty much, that's what ended the conversation for any real journalist. No one else ever gave any value to what this guy says. But I don't know what this guy's deal is. He seems needs to just be. I mean, shit, man. If we found out 5 years from now the guy worked for like the Russians or the Chinese, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's interesting. He's definitely has it out for Lou. That is for sure. Like I checked his Twitter.
Dude, 60 Minutes saw that stuff too, and then they were like, "We're not even gonna bring this up because it's like a lunatic saying the opposite of what established politicians are saying."
Sure.
Like,
Sure. Absolutely.
The NBC News link where they posted Harry Reid's letter.
Okay, no, that's very good to hear. I haven't seen that yet. Yeah, we're doing a follow-up on this because there was a lot of feedback on it that we got from people like, hey, this isn't basically what you're telling me. That's what people started telling me. Hey, maybe this isn't what you should be looking at. You should be looking over here. So we want to do a follow-up and clear some of this stuff up that we had said, right, that we had pointed people towards. So, yes.
You should just look at what I just sent you. You should watch the 60 Minutes piece. I mean, 60 Minutes are widely considered the most respectable, like... For sure.
I actually saw it a long time ago. I just don't remember. I mean, that was quite a while ago, right?
No,
yeah.
About a year ago.
About a year ago, yeah.
It's the most watched CBS 60 Minutes segment of all time, which tells you a lot, too.
Oh, wow.
And there is like, you know, sober and conservative as you could possibly get. The head of CBS 60 Minutes personally called the White House and fact-checked everything Lou was saying before they ran the story and got a thumbs up. In fact, they ended up getting on the phone with a 4-star general who confirmed it all too. But you can watch that segment. The senior reporter from 60 Minutes is the one who does the story. I mean, that's pretty much all you need to know right there, you know?
Sure, I understand what you're saying. I understand where y'all are coming from as well. I get it. I totally get it. Okay, well, look, I appreciate you clearing some of this up. Is anything that we've talked about I'm allowed to mention, or you just want me to keep all of this?
You can say it's on background from what you can say from what I don't want you to know.
Sure, I got you. Heard. Yeah. Okay, man. Well, absolutely.
We'll, like you said, dude, stay in touch. Well, I'll line up an interview when we do it again.
Sure, absolutely, man.
And to be totally honest, I'm not saying that to everybody. Like, I ignore 80% of some emails we get. Like,
I get it.
I looked at yours and I was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah.
I honestly don't even send out outreach emails. Like I said, I'm not even the person that books, and I'm now going to bring that up in our meeting on Monday. Like, guys, you never. But this is why I don't send out emails. Okay, like this is why I don't do it, because it's funny. I'm like the nicest guy in the world when you meet me or talk to me, But I guess sometimes when I send out emails, I don't know, man. I don't know what's wrong with me. I need a class or a master class on it or something. I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
It's all good. Well, yeah. I mean, definitely don't add any. Don't like prop up or like add any credibility to this guy's like claims, especially after you see the Harry Reid letter and the 60 Minutes piece saying that's frankly it'll just make Lou like not want to do an interview. But like,
sure, I get that.
Interview with the guy, and he's dude, the most credible guy on the face of the earth regarding this topic.
Sure.
And that will become even more public in the next few months, I think. How credible he is. So you don't trust me when I say, if anybody who's a part of anything you think about Lou is going to completely eat their words within the next 90 days.
Wow.
I'll tease you with that, but that's the truth.
Wow, that's good to hear. Look, all I want at the end of the day is to know the truth about things. I mean, that's all I care about, right? But I will agree with you, man. This Green Shirt guy does have some sort of vendetta against Elizondo at this point, for sure. There's something going on there. So, but anyway, I appreciate Chad, man. I appreciate you giving me a chance to clear this up as well. So we'll stay in contact.
You got it.
Thank you, brother. Have a good rest of the day, man.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Dude, what was that email you wrote?
I don't even know, dude.
I want to know too.
I'm like, what's you writing that email?
I don't know. He immediately, I remember I sent it, and within 2 minutes, he responded call me. I was like, oh, what? And that's why I was like, dude, no, it's not. I didn't mean anything. I'm just asking for I think I was asking, is this true about what Green Street said about Lou and, that sort of thing. And even back then I knew Green Street had sort of a vendetta against Elizondo. It's interesting, watching that full clip back again. Yeah, that's, you'd learn a couple things in that. One, the 60 Minutes producers knew about Green Street's claims. right? Because Green Street always say, why is nobody covering this? They're ignoring it. No, they see you, dude. They think you're crazy, right? When you've got senators, Senate majority leaders vouching for Luis Elizondo, and this crazy New York Post journalist saying, no, it's this, right? So the 60 Minutes producers knew about it and said no. And then again, at that time, he was saying, and in 90 days, everyone will eat their words, right? You know, this book coming out, but it never did then. So now with this book out, is that kind of the feeling, right? Is everyone's eating their words? There's more in this book to sort of back up some of Lou Elizondo's claims, right? And then there was also the part of this top secret project, right, that they were working on. He said that at the beginning, and I think it is this documentary, but I don't know what else has Lou done, right, in the last couple of years. What else could it be? It's not the book. He would have said that, right? It's this other thing. So it made me just think it's this project. So I don't know. What do y'all think?
Go ahead, Pavel.
Okay. Well, I do have some information about the Dan Farah stuff, because right after I heard Fravor and Graves talking about this documentary, teasing it, I started digging and I started asking the people that I usually ask about this stuff, and people who are close to Lou, to everybody there, right? And when I found out the name, the person who told me was like, but you can't really say it because there's some legal constraint that doesn't allow for people to say the name. And a lot of people involved in the documentary signed NDAs. And this happens a lot in Hollywood, you know, because when it's a super secret project,
they do it for like Deadpool and Wolverine or Star Wars.
They have snipers and everything, you know, if you spill the beans. So I understand that part, but I also kept hearing some other stuff. So there's two potential things that they're going to cover on this documentary that I think I can talk about it now, because Dan Farah's name is already out. So I'm just going to say what I heard, that these two potential storylines are going to be. One of them has to do with humanity's real origins, and it ties into all the old scripture and the three Abrahamic religions and all that stuff.
You're saying this is what potential possibilities for what this documentary will be about. Got it.
Yes. And the other one that I heard is that they have some footage close up that is really sensitive, and that may be one of the reasons they signed NDAs for it, because they didn't want other people to know that they do have this footage until like just shortly before they released the documentary.
Yeah.
I don't know which one of both versions I should believe. Maybe none of them, but the people that I've been talking to are people who are close to the periphery of this production. So
could
that's
be both.
what I heard. Maybe, I don't know.
Right? You can include where it is now, right? If it's humans' origins, well, that has an end story, right? So then it comes to today, and then here's this video, and
let's not forget about Lou's background, because he's a biologist.
Yeah,
that's what he studied. That's his major. So and he talks a lot about these biologics in the book, and he goes deep into Hermetic philosophy in many of the interviews he's done in the past. So he knows a lot more about the whole lore than he lets on. You know, it's pretty evident for me.
Real quick, I do want to say that in that Dan Farah clip that I played, that he did send me Harry Reid's thing, and I was able to confirm, and I do, you know, lean more towards, you know, the credibility of Lou Elizondo's story. And I like Dan Farah a lot. And like, I just want to make that clear. Like, and I want to see this documentary that's going to come out. You know, for a minute there, I kind of felt like Dan was pressuring me not to do anything other than toe the line. Otherwise, hey, you're not going to get this interview. But the more I've thought about it and listened back to that conversation, I wouldn't summarize it that way at all, in fact. And it feels like just a guy that's trying to get a story out and working with somebody and just, I'm in Texas. We never met before, right? Like, it's just this conversation. And I tend to agree with him when he says, hey, we got these other people saying these things. This other dude's saying this, like, I'm going over here, right? And he's clearly been a part of some phenomenal productions. So, like, am I looking forward to this documentary that he's going to do coming out? Yeah, goddamn right. I'm looking forward to this thing. This thing is probably going to be amazing. David Fravor teased it in that Merged podcast with Ryan Graves, where he said the most crystal clear footage you've ever seen, right? This must be it. Is it this cockpit footage, right? Or what else is it? Like, at what distance? Like, it could be crystal clear, but is it like definitive or identifiable or something? Does that make sense? Like, maybe not identifiable, but right, or at least identifiable that it's unidentifiable, right? Oh, okay, wow, that is this crazy looking thing. Like, you can see this and that of it and the detail, and I don't know, man. This is either way, it will be a good production to look forward to. And if it is about humanity's origins, that's could be interesting as well. Pavel, we were talking about this, I don't remember where, the Nazca mummies, right? Do you think maybe with the revelation of the Nazca mummies, that's why there's maybe potentially been a delay in this documentary coming out? Is that like it was new information, and if they're studying human origins, because that's what the mummies kind of is part of that story. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the thing is that until the entire scientific community is on the same page on these specimens, we're not going to get any type of correlation between what's happening in the US and what's happening in Peru. And I think we're a long way from that still. I think that what Los Angeles did with Burchett, taking the bodies to the body farm in Tennessee, that's a major step, because that's a no BS kind of place. You know what you're looking at when you put it through their instruments. So we're just a few months away. We're just a few months away from knowing if these smaller bodies, because those are the ones that Maussan has, are really were really alive at some point, or if they're really constructions, because that's what we want to find out.
And look, real quick, first of all, that's great. Way you worded that. Pavel and I today we're going to record an update about the mummies and present it on Vetted. But because of Lou's book, I texted him and was like, "Hey man, let's switch it up. Book's coming out. Let's do this instead." So we are going to be doing an episode where we can catch everybody up on what's happened up to this point. Because there is a lot out there. And yeah, man. Okay, that's a great point to bring up, and I'm with you about the Burchett thing. That's a great way to sum that up, for sure. Look, guys, let's move to another story that, Clint, you may not have heard of, but you're going to be fascinated with this dude. Okay, this guy named Harold Malmgren. Gosh, he has such a hard name to pronounce. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a video. I'm not going to give you any context. I'm just going to play this video of this guy, okay? Harold Malmgren. Then I'm going to tell you how he fits in to the UFO story out of nowhere. Okay, y'all. Here we go.
You were actually in the room with JFK. Tell me exactly at the peak of the crisis what was happening.
Yes, I was there, and it was scary. No one in the world knew how close we were. I think at the key point, we were thinking we have 4 hours to decide everything, and otherwise everything goes off.
And you were what, 25, 26?
No, I think I was the ripe age of 28.
28, okay.
But I was the go-between between McNamara and JFK and McGeorge Bundy, who was the NSC director. And, it was a time when Jack Kennedy brought to Washington a lot of young, fresh minds, most of them economists. I was in that crowd. And our job wasn't to tell people with experience what to do, but ask a lot of questions, get people to think outside the box. And so I was there conveying questions like, okay, if we go, what do we hit? I mean, if we hit Moscow and it only goes on a few hours and we want to stop, who do we talk to?
At the end.
At the end, yeah. And a bunch of generals, including the Strategic Air Command chief over in the Pentagon, said, well, of course we have to go and not worry about that. We've got to kill those guys in Moscow. They created all this trouble. And I said, but are we ready to go over there and govern Russia? And everybody said, no, we're not planning on that. I said, well, then if you want to stop, who do you talk to? Why don't we just agree that hitting Moscow is the last thing we want to do? And then one of the generals said, that's the best damn question that anybody's ever raised. He said, and let's leak that to the Russians, and so they won't hit Washington either, and we're all safe.
And I'm glad to see the profound self-interest.
Well, and then we also had this problem of everything had been pre-planned. We had a government that was ready to roll at the next level. And they were all supposed to go to a place called Mount Weather, which is actually right near where I live now in the countryside. Mount Weather is a cavernous place in the mountains. And all these people were supposed to go, and all of a sudden the request came in, can I take my wife and kids? And of course the order came out, no, this is, they said, well, in that case, I think I'll stay in Washington, find somebody else. So what happens, the only people who went were the janitors and cooks and the people ready, to take care of people. Nobody showed up.
So that's interesting. So people, when at that moment, people said, you know what?
They chose family.
Yeah, screw America, I'm going to stay at home.
They chose family.
That is interesting.
That's why I say this 4 hours moment was really revealing of how people behave when they're looking over the cliff.
Okay, there we go. So that is Harold Malgren. Okay, Malgren. Oh my God, I'm gonna butcher that name for eternity. And you can hear him speak. Okay, this guy yesterday. Where is it? Boom. He tweets this out down here at the bottom. I'll read Ross's afterwards. 60 years ago, I was provided highest level classifications to lead DoD work on nuclear weapons and anti-missile defense. Informed briefly on other world technologies by CIA's Richard Bissell, and remember that name, Richard Bissell, who had been in charge of Skunk Works, Area 51, Los Alamos, etc., but sworn to secrecy. Right. Then Ross tweets out, retweets it. He says, extraordinary new admission from Harold Malmgren that he was briefed on other world technologies by CIA's Richard Bissell. Malmgren is a former senior aide to U.S. Presidents John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford. Now, Harold also tweeted out right here. He said, read the book, then watch comments of others. Bissell briefed me off the record after his resignation as CIA Deputy Director Special Ops. I am not seeking public confirmation status, just telling my personal story. Confirmations will be up to others directly involved in coming months. And then he wrote, I do not know Luis Elizondo and have no connection with his book's publication. The contents had been disclosed previously, and I simply thought time has come for the rest of humanity to start thinking about what it means for understanding of the world in which we live. He wrote, some responders to my X messages about Elizondo's upcoming book are probing my direct knowledge of government UAP research. I never directly worked on UAPs, nor indirectly used such research in my own work. Therefore, I cannot be treated as a source of confirmation of UAP info. Now, this is Harold Malmgren. Okay. Is it Harold or Harold? I've been saying it wrong. Either way, right here, he's a scholar, ambassador, and international negotiator who has been senior aide to U.S. Presidents John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford, and to U.S. Senators Ribicoff, Long, United States Senate Committee of Finance. He has acted as an advisor to many foreign leaders and CEOs of financial institutions and corporate businesses, and has been a frequent author of articles and papers on global economic, political, and security affairs. He attended Yale, Oxford, and partly at Harvard. He is from Boston. Now, what makes this guy interesting, and I've got more on him, okay? We're not done with that guy, okay? Because it gets more interesting. Now, he tweets this out yesterday, okay? Out of the blue. It's not like this guy, if you go through his Twitter or stuff, it's not like this is what he does at all, okay? Guess who else tweeted out his tweet from yesterday? Matthew Pines. Clint, if you'll remember, that's the episode you and I did on Vetted not too long ago, right? Covering Matthew Pines. Well, I think in there he spoke about people coming forward. This may be one of them. He kind of tweeted out like, here you go. I don't know. There's just a lot of things came out yesterday out of nowhere to coincide with Lou's book release, right? Because the next thing after this is Kevin Day. We're not there yet, but we are going to get to that. He also out of nowhere tweeted something out right before Lou's book release, right? But this is what's interesting about Harold's tweet, right? This is the tweet he put out, right, that I read. And you think, oh, it's just a tweet. No, he's re-quoting, right? Like he's responding to this quote, to this comment. You're awesome. From April 15th. Okay. And if we go further, it's part of a thread, right? So he's responding from an April 15th post, right? Where he says they're talking about whatever other stories, right? But this one is interesting right here. I was reminded today that I had met and engaged with Jeff Bezos' grandfather at Los Alamos in I think that says 63, when I was leader of, oh my God, I cannot even.
Costing the design and build.
That's it. Costing the design and build of first anti-missile defense system for the JCS. Hearing from him his alleged work on reverse engineering of, he put UOP objects. Did he mean UAP? Or what is a UOP? You down with UOP? I don't know what UOP, I think he means UAP, but I just found that interesting. Out of nowhere, he responds to a post from 4 months ago and puts.
Are you telling me that self-made man Jeff Bezos, his grandfather, hung out with Harold Malmgren when he was designing and reverse engineering UAP materials?
I mean,
interesting.
I don't know.
The guy who owns his own private space company now?
Yeah, it's like, right? Like, boom. And then he responds to that now, right? At Lou's books coming out, right? Like, it's just weird 4 months later to respond to that. And then when you dig in further, exactly, you find this Jeff Bezos story. You're like, what the hell? What's going on here? So, and it's part of a larger post, right? That's right here. It starts here and then works its way down to the Jeff Bezos, right? Him responding, right? So I don't know. Anyway, I found that interesting. And one last interesting thing. Okay. Remember the name, what was it? Richard Bissell? I already forgot.
The vacuum guy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I've got Dyson coming up right after this.
Dyson, yeah.
And Red Rover, or what was it? I don't know. Hoover. I don't remember. Anyway, right here, Richard Bissell, right? This is who Malmgren was talking about, right? FYI, in 1955, Richard Bissell was the CIA director of the U-2 spy plane project and legitimate creator of, does that say legitimate? Right? Yeah, legitimate creator of Area 51. He helped discover the Nevada test site and developed for the United States Air Force and CIA. Unknowns or UFOs were often the cover story of U.S. classified aircraft sightings, but he was later briefing officials on other world tech. Or was it just a nod to the lengthy usage of the cover story of U.S. secret tech? And there's a picture of Richard Bissell. I found him to be interesting. So, gentlemen, I'll throw it to y'all. Any thoughts? Just, I don't know. They're just throwing it out. Pavel, go ahead. If somebody's going, if somebody's, you know what I mean? You got your heart pumping and just thoughts there, go for it.
Yeah. First, Matthew Pines, the first time I found out about him was when he posted a news piece from back in the day that talked about Jeff Bezos's grandfather. And now that he's like pointing out to this too, it's an interesting thread to pull, I think. I covered this on my channel actually yesterday, right after it happened, the Malmgren stuff. And well, how Matthew Pines painted it was that there was going to be a coup de grace and someone high up in the government was going to announce something or come forward. And when I saw this tweet, I was like, could this be? But then I saw Matthew saying, no, it's not, but it's important still because he's really high up. Exactly. And I don't think that he's going to be the only one, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of people that are just waiting. They were just waiting for Lou's book to come out so they could feel more free to talk about a lot of the stuff that Lou's covering here. So we got to be on the lookout, especially on Twitter, because that's usually where these people come out and drop bombs on everyone. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Clint, what do you think when you hear that? Did you know anything about that, first of all?
This is the first I've heard of it, actually. So that's interesting because it ties together some interesting history, right? Like Jeff Bezos isn't a nobody. His grandfather apparently wasn't a nobody either. So this that's an interesting thread to pull for sure. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And his father was working on a reverse engineering program, and now his grandson owns his own space company. That's interesting. I come back to, especially with Matthew Pines, Carl Nell at the SALT conference, and this is what we said in that episode you and I did together. Wall Street's on board now with disclosure, so you're going to see it happen because the smart money is on board. And I think the reason for it is because the next century is going to be about who can get out into the solar system farthest, the fastest, because whoever gets there first is going to own it. It's going to be a gold rush for a whole new generation of space technology that is sitting in these classified programs or sitting in these commercial research labs at wherever. And they've been sitting on it for like 65, 70 years. And it's time to bring some of that stuff out. I really do believe that's what it's going to turn into. And I think if disclosure doesn't come in some kind of formal way through an act of Congress, then it's going to happen in the court system. And it's just going to be these, like, what happens if Jeff Bezos, because of his connections, is sitting on some kind of special classified technology that he can use at Blue Origin, but Tesla doesn't have access to it, or SpaceX, I should say. So now you've got Elon or Richard Branson and his company, or any of the other companies. Yeah. There's a question there. And I also think it's interesting that Malmgren, considering who he is, to put that out, it seems like this is a very coordinated. They play it off like it's not coordinated, but there's clearly a coordination happening here between who's releasing what at what time, and they're building up to something. So the question is going to be, like, if this documentary comes out, what could they possibly put into it that's going to be the showstopper that shuts down this debate once and for all and makes it a done deal? Because so far we've seen documentary after documentary, book after book, all these people coming forward saying all this stuff, and then it just never really goes anywhere, and we're just right back on the same hamster wheel. So I'm curious to see, like, are they for real going to close the book on this once and for all? And maybe the documentary is packed with huge names that are going to come out and spill the beans. I don't know. I feel like it's going to take some legal disclosure too. I do
have a feeling that we're going to see an uptick on USOs, and we already are.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that, Pavel. No, y'all both make some really good points. And look, I would say three things. One, it's interesting who this guy is and how he fits into this, right? Because what does he mean by other worldly tech, right? And or technologies and informally briefed? What does that mean? Right? Exactly.
Mhm.
And who else is out there like this, right? That's been informally briefed. Just that sounds like a lot of people would be informally briefed, right?
Well, that's what I'm sorry, Patrick, but that's what I'm saying. And not to jump in on that, but I think to your point, that's what's so weird about Chris Mellon saying like no one knew, like no, it's all crickets around here, and I was just like scratching my head, couldn't figure it out. And now you have like all these people. They're like, oh yeah, that CIA guy pulled me aside in the hallway and fucking told me everything. And he's the guy who invented Area 51, and it's like what?
Yeah,
It can't both be true, right?
Yeah.
It's like somebody's full of shit.
No, you're right. I mean, I agree. I agree. That's why it's important to talk about this stuff and figure out what, what's going on. And there could be, complete reasonable explanations for why those things don't add up, right? But look, number 2, I would say is that this coming Friday, I am recording this little tease, okay? A little vetted tease right here, y'all. This coming Friday, I am recording an episode with Bob McGuire, who previously over the weekend told me a story in an X space about Tim Taylor and his connection.
Science Bob, right?
Science Bob.
Holy crap, dude.
And Tim Taylor and his connection to SpaceX and Elon Musk specifically, right? And what's happening there. And there's some interesting things there because we're talking about Jeff Bezos and his thing and like, because you hear Elon's comments about, extraterrestrial life and aliens and what he says about UFOs, right? But then, Tim Taylor and what he's done, right? These things all start to seem weird. So that'll be a tease that'll come out this weekend. I am recording that this Friday, so there'll be more on that. I'm going to pull that thread more even on this Jeff Bezos thing and write all of this. So that'll be interesting. So I'll have more on that. And third thing, we talk about all these people coming forward, like Clint brought up, right? What is that? Do y'all hear that?
Is that a welding torch?
I don't know. There we go. Yeah, that is Pavel. What you got going on over there? Someone's breaking into Pavel's.
It's really hot in here, and I had 2 fans
fan.
pointing at me, so I don't start sweating.
Do what I do. Get a woman off camera with a big leaf. You guys can't see her, but she is fanning me right now, and it's good for the mic because you don't notice. But I'm being fanned currently. Yeah, save the grapes. I will. Just kidding. Look. Speaking of the overflow of all these people coming forward, right? Like Clint was bringing up, brings us to our next topic here, which is Mr. Kevin Day, because he is also someone coming out. And not only this, check this out. Okay. Witness of the Nimitz UFO, right? I guess I'm calling it that. The Tic Tac, right? It was a radar technician, whole story. Kevin Day, look him up. All right. I'm going to play video of him talking a little bit, but specifically, I'll tell you what, let me play this video and then we'll go into the stuff that he came out with because he came out naming names.
Can I take a 2-second? I just need like a 2-minute break real fast. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm going to play this video.
All right, let me duck out. I'll be right back.
Yeah, do it. All right, here we go, Pavel.
UAP is real. No. UAP is findable. I've done it twice already. UAP is knowable. We can know what this is. And the reason why we need to wake up and grow up and sober up to this worldwide is because there's legitimate reports out there that in some cases encounters cause people to die. They got sick, they got cancer and stuff like that. And I totally believe it, But isn't the same thing true with today's technology? If I walk out in front of the freeway, I probably get struck and maimed or killed by a car, huh? But it doesn't mean the tech itself is bad. And that's the reason why we need to understand it better. Well, in addition to a whole list of other things, of course.
Mr. Kevin Day. So there's his face. I'm sure you recognize him. Those are interesting comments. That's why I picked that. I like that clip. And again, Pavel, you heard about this, right? Of Kevin coming out, right? Man. So he came out on Facebook with a bunch of different posts.
Oh, yeah. And he named a lot of people.
He did. He named a lot of people, and I'm going to show it pardon me. I'm going to show it right here. And UFO Joe on Twitter kind of compiled it all. So shout out to him for doing that work and bring it, because it was all over the place. He was leaving messages, all over the place. So boom, right here. I'm going to read his entire statement. Okay. This is just his whole Kevin Day statement that he wrote on Facebook. I was sworn to track and report all air contacts detected by spy radar, including identification, flight safety, and tactical recommendations. This was my duty, just as it was for everyone else. Yet, I'm of the very, very few who truly fulfilled that duty to our country. That is, did our jobs. In return, I lost my career, ended up destitute in the wilderness, and went through a painful divorce after a 30-year marriage with an ex-wife who even attempted to kill me with a sword. I lost the respect of my fellow warfighters and endured relentless ridicule. I faced it all, seemingly in vain. I now realize I was on a misguided quest, and I should have known that most were too cowardly to stand up. Only a few of the pilots and enlisted personnel involved showed true courage. And so now the entire world is going to know who they are. I've had quite enough of bearing this burden alone. F them. Let's see. Aboard the Princeton, the key players were the CO, Tactical Action Officer, Anti-Air Warfare Coordinator, Air Interceptor Controller, and the Electronic Warfare Coordinator. Names to follow. Kevin Day starts naming people, y'all, from the Nimitz encounter, right? Okay. Never named before, some of them, most of them. Clearly, the top one here you've heard of. Can y'all read some of these? Can y'all read it? Okay. Okay. Y'all help me with this. After this, I'm going to read Captain David Fravor, and then y'all take turns reading 2 through 7. Is that cool?
I'll take 2, 4, and 6. Is that okay?
Cool.
Oh my God. I don't know. I'm not good at algebra. Number 1, these are the key players in the 2004 Nimitz Tic Tac encounter were: number 1, Captain David Fravor, commanding officer of VFA 41, the Black Aces Squadron. He was one of the fighter pilots who visually observed and engaged with the Tic Tac UFO. Thank God some of the pilots showed real courage. Fravor is a hero, even though he is an egotistical asshole. Wow. I didn't realize I was in there. Forgot about that. Wow. Okay. Beyond belief. I am not the only one who that knows that. One that knows that. Jesus. Okay. That caught me off guard. Okay, Pavel, take it away.
Number 2, Lieutenant Commander Jim Slight, a pilot from BFA 41 who was also involved in the encounter. He was flying alongside Captain Fravor during the engagement.
Number 3 is Lieutenant Chad Underwood, a pilot from VFA 41 who recorded the encounter on video. His footage, known as the FLIR 1 video, captured the Tic Tac object from his fighter jet.
Okay, Captain Carl E. Smith, commanding officer of the USS Princeton, CG-59, the Ticonderoga class cruiser that was part of the Nimitz carrier group.
Number 5 is Lieutenant Commander Jason J. Turner. I'd want a better nickname if I was Jason Turner. But Jason J. Turner, Tactical Actions Officer aboard the USS Princeton, responsible for overseeing the ship's combat operations and radar systems.
Number 6, Lieutenant Commander Brian C.R. B.C. Powers, Anti-Aircraft Warfare Coordinator aboard the USS Princeton, responsible for managing the ship's air defense operations.
And number 7, Captain Robert Bob T. Bobby McCullough, commander of, that's a cool name, commander of Carrier Strike Group 11, which included the USS Nimitz and its associated ships.
Excellent. It says these individuals played a significant roles in the events and subsequent investigations related to the Tic Tac UFO encounter. So that comes out of nowhere, y'all. Okay, out of nowhere yesterday, or within the last couple days, right? All leading up to, again, over the course of multiple, posts on Facebook. But then he told people, "Hey, I don't have an X account. Post it on X for me." That's where I saw it. But shout out to UFO Joe for piecing that all together. Yeah, what are y'all's first thoughts hearing this, and what is supposed to happen now? Does that make sense? Like, okay, the name. Like, I hope the idea isn't everyone in the comments like, "Oh, let's start reaching out to these people." God, no, please don't do that. But let's not do that. Let's not, right? Like, reach out to these people. Like, hell no. But what should happen, if anything? Curious, like, what do we do with these names?
Get them into Congress to testify under oath. Like, that's what this has to really boil down to. At the end of the day, it's going to boil down to a bunch of guys from the Attorney General's office kicking down the door at Lockheed Martin like the Kool-Aid man, and going in and like asking the questions, like, show us this stuff. Where is it? And that's really what's going to settle it. So I think putting these names out on the radar is just going to make Congress pay attention to it and say, well, okay, if these are the people, let's get them in here. Yeah.
I would like to know if they're part of the 40 whistleblowers David Grush spoke to. I would bet some money that some of them are, maybe. But I do think that Kevin Day has gone through hell, because I've seen many of his interviews and I've seen him decline steadily into a more stressful individual and very secluded. And he's spoken about some of the experiences he's had, and some of them are really terrifying. And I do think that it is pretty unfair that only like 2 or 3 people out of that encounter showed their face and gave their name, and the other ones haven't for years. I don't think that's fair. And I do get why Day is so crossed at some of them. You can tell by the way he writes this, and it was a long time coming. I applaud him for being brave and giving out those names, and I think those people need to like step forward and answer, and maybe take some of that weight off of Kevin's back, man, because really you guys should look at all the conferences he's given and the interviews. You can tell it's very taxing on him.
Pavel, what's some of the weird stuff that happened today? Because I've watched that too. I've noticed he seems very frazzled in all the interviews I've seen, but I haven't been following his story.
He had experiences very similar.
Normal?
Yeah, he had experiences very similar to what Jim Sevivan went through, like the hitchhiker effect, and it affected his family. He said he had an encounter in his house, and when he talks about it, he's really terrified. Like, and I know it's a fringe topic, guys. I mean, I get it. Talking about experiencers, Patrick had 3 of them. I could tell that, for example, Parsi, he's also like really stressed out and really affected by it on a deep level. And I think Kevin Day is going through the same thing. And I think we should like just raise more awareness to these people that go through these experiences, and we just like brush them off. And no, dude, we need to pay more attention to them, listen to them more. And especially people like Kevin Day, because he's an officer. Like, he had firsthand experience, and all of these encounters that he's had so far, it's stuff that keeps happening to a lot of people all around the world. We can't keep ignoring this. That's just my take on it.
I think, I'll just play devil's advocate here a little bit. Like, I can understand how some people don't want to come forward, right? We also talk about that and protecting people who don't want to come forward, and we should respect people's privacy. And at the same time, like, what if these people from this encounter, they just didn't want to come forward, right? And now Kevin Day's put them on blast, and everyone's going to be talking about them, and maybe that's not fair to them if they.
I'm
didn't
just
want
saying that
families,
I don't know. He's carried the weight for a long time. That's
I think there's something to that, and that maybe he was promised things behind the scenes by certain people who manage disclosure or manage a movement or something, or we don't know what kind of deal he set up to come forward with his story initially, right? Don't worry, you come out. This will make other people want to come out and tell their story, right? Be brave, come out. This will encourage people to come forward, right? And maybe that didn't happen, right? His expectations weren't met for whatever reason, so he feels slighted. So now the energy goes towards, well, you need to come out, when really maybe that's not where the energy needed to go, if that makes sense, that he had and felt that way, which I'm sure is genuine. And just heartbreaking to hear the other parts. Divorce, ex-wife, tried to kill him with a sword. I mean, what the hell? This is
weird.
Great. That's crazy. This is that. Holy cow. And I also read that he had experiences with orbs or something on the Princeton a few days before the Nimitz encounter, right? Before this, Tic Tac encounter. Supposedly he had seen some things, as well leading up to it, so he, maybe I don't know. It's very interesting. I feel for the guy. And I can feel how you feel pressured and you just want to start talking and come out. And in some ways, some people are going to be happy about that. Others may not. I get to, again, just, it depends, but yeah, interesting for sure.
We can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. So sooner or later,
sure.
This stuff all has to come out, doesn't it? I mean,
sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's like if someone got in trouble because they came out with the truth about UFOs and all of a sudden it was real and whatever, we feel bad, but deep down we'd be like, I'm so glad that came out. Let's be real, right? Like at the end of the day, we're human. There's, and we can almost do both, see the silver lining, I guess. But deep down, I think we do want people to come forward, break NDAs, spill the beans, all these things, right?
I think it's just hard for individual people. Like on the outside, it's easy for people like us to be excited, like, all right, spill the beans, come forward, say it all. But when you're the person who it's like they're following you and they're following your kid around and like you've got 100%. A wife at home and it's like there's this weird car at the end of the block watching your shit all the time. And it's like you're getting weird phone calls and your emails being checked and like all this stuff happens to these people. It's a whole different ballgame for them.
I agree.
And it's hard. It's like, how do you can't. It's really hard. It's easy for us to say, like, I wish they'd come forward, but it's hard to imagine what it must be like to be in those shoes when they're messing with you.
See, and that I agree with that. And that becomes part of the issue. Like, let's say, for instance, Edward Snowden. Now, I'm not going to focus on the part of his story that most people focus on when they bring this up. I'm going to focus on how he came out, right? What he did exactly, right? So he just one day decides to click and turn. But up until that point, that moment in time, he's not being watched. He's not being followed. Nobody's right. He's working. He's doing his thing. Of course, the radar's not on him because he didn't do anything to lead up to that point that would make him be looked at and watched, right? At this point, and that's what makes it different with this. At this point, there's people out there, right? And they're being followed, right? And then being asked, right? So they have to go through something, then make that flip decision. When his decision, that's why it worked. No one saw it coming. He was able to do it because he wasn't being watched and no one saw it coming, right? Just like what's his name from the UK that broke in and looked at the
NASA hacker.
Yeah, the NASA hacker, that guy,
McKinnon.
right?
Gary McKinnon.
Same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was looking for that. And he was able to bust in. And that's the same thing for Edward Snowden, right? So, and a lot of other whistleblowers who do that, right? It's the element of surprise that makes it work. And I think that's what's missing now from this topic. And especially as it becomes more public, that element of surprise is gone in a lot of ways, because everyone in these programs knows it's being talked about, knows there's legislation trying to be passed about it, right? Knows these other things. So it becomes a little more different. It's like if the project that Edward Snowden was working on was in the news all the time and people were talking about writing books and podcasts and this and that, and then he wants to break, right? It's just a whole nother game.
And we know it keeps going because Tim Gallaudet said that he had an email chain with a bunch of other admirals who were looking at this, and somebody went into their email and pulled that entire conversation out. Who has that kind of power to go into like the whatever classified system admirals use to email each other and like delete your shit? Who can do that? That's what I'm curious about. And so you have like this chain all the way from the top brass in the Navy all the way down to these guys on the carriers that are just doing their job, and they're all seeing the same stuff, and it's on all these different pieces of equipment. I don't know, man. It sounds like it feels like the dam is about to break. Like there's just so much happening and building up to something. I'm convinced that there's going to be like a big day, whatever that day looks like. Maybe it's the documentary, maybe it's something else.
And it's not gonna be pretty, man, because I know that there's also fighting between them for these contracts and this tech. What they did at Seoul, that's exactly what they're doing. Like, and they are making people sign NDAs and saying no, that's not true, because they're keeping it for themselves. I'm gonna give you a little preview of a video that I'm doing right now that has to do with this discovery Dr. Gary Nolan did on the brain of the coated putamen. Newsflash, there was another scientist decades before that who had been studying this part of the brain, and he mentions it dozens of times in his work in shamans. And in Luis Elizondo's book, there's this connection that he makes of people who had blood from Native Americans who are more prone to have this part of the brain more developed. So this is not really a new discovery. I mean, they noticed it, Dr. Nolan and his team, and kudos to them for that, because no one in the scientific community and the English speaking community had noticed it before, but Dr. Jacobo Greenberg did. And he had been studying it for decades. And they're not talking about that. That's one perfect example of the things they keep to themselves. When the time is right, they reveal them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look,
I had real quick. I had one more thing about the Kevin Day thing. Yeah. I had a conversation with someone yesterday that I'm going to interview soon, and they were showing me a report called it's an Air Force report from 1994 called New Horizons, New World Vistas. That's what it was. New World Vistas. This is 1994. The Air Force was looking at, they were projecting ahead to 2034. That's how far ahead they were looking. And they said that they were anticipating a full and complete understanding of the neurology of the structure of the brain and brain computer interfaces like Neuralink. They're working on this back in 1994. And even then it was already old technology. And they said in this paper that they wanted the ability to basically put a chip into someone that they could hit with a beam from a distance and make you hear voices. They can make you think you're going crazy. They can make you think you're seeing stuff. And they said they had tested these. And this actually came out in a court case that was filed later that IBM had actually worked on and developed some of these chips. And I'm going to have this guy on, and he's going to talk about all this stuff. But it's interesting that the symptoms about Kevin Day that you were just talking about, Pablo's, correlate very much with some of the stuff that this guy was talking about that they found. They tested this stuff on prisoners, on enlisted people, on people in mental hospitals, and people who worked in the prison system, just in general. And that's what they found, is they were able to basically create the conditions in their head that are almost identical to what an alien abductee would report or an experiencer would report. And so it makes you wonder, like, okay, are some of these people being targeted by some kind of weird classified weaponry like Havana syndrome? And there was a hearing on Capitol Hill, and you can find it on Forbes YouTube channel, and they talked about this. And it was a bunch of intelligence guys, and they were saying, yeah, Havana syndrome, same thing. You hear voices, you think you're going crazy, you see things that aren't there, your life falls apart. It's slow and it's a very slow process, but it takes a toll that just over time becomes insurmountable on people, and they just break. And what it looks like from the outside is it looks like someone's just going crazy slowly. And I thought that was really interesting. When you were talking about Kevin Day, it just made me think about that.
Yeah, John Burroughs also talked about that on the interview we did, that he also thinks that this Havana syndrome is some sort of weapon that has been developed. So,
I think Lou's even mentioned Havana syndrome once or twice, if I remember right. Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Gary Nolan has studied, well, I think allegedly, let me throw that in there, some of the victims of this, or was approached to, and potentially may even been the origin of his connection with working with the government on some of the stuff, testing stuff. But anyway, look, let's play this last little thing here, and then we'll kind of get to some comments and kind of just roll out
I
here.
do
Right?
have to run after what you play because I got
Absolutely.
some work to do. So
love
I
it.
do apologize for that.
Absolutely, Pavel. Of course, man. Don't sweat it. Look, there's a little preview, little audio thing here. A sample. I don't know. I'm just gonna play and see if it sucks. We'll stop it.
In my 20s, I joined the U.S. Army and was recruited into various sensitive programs in military intelligence. Later in my career, I did 3 combat tours in Afghanistan and the Middle East and went on to work all over the world with America's most elite special operations and intelligence units. As an operations officer and senior intelligence officer, I was assigned missions throughout the world, focusing on counterinsurgencies, counter-narcotics, counterterrorism, and counterespionage. I ran intelligence efforts against enemies including ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, the Taliban, and the FARC. I led classified investigations worldwide with partners that included the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, and the Department of Homeland Security, known as DHS. I worked within the Department of Defense, the Office of the National Counterintelligence Executive, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Eventually, I managed special access programs for the National Security Council and even the White House. Finally, in 2008, I returned to a job at the Department of Defense. While in that assignment, I worked for the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, also known as OUSDI, focusing on an information sharing operation between the DoD, DHS, and state, local, and tribal law enforcement authorities. The feds had recently begun helping these smaller law enforcement agencies tap into larger, more sophisticated national databases, so folks on the ground could better do their jobs and maybe track down drug dealers or terrorists or spies operating within the U.S. and on tribal lands. At the time, I had a large corner office in a building the Pentagon rented in Arlington, Virginia. Among other things, the building housed various departments of Boeing Aerospace, including Phantom Works, the division that is charged with dreaming up Boeing's future technologies. My 11th floor corner office looked out at the Pentagon. In the distance, I saw the Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and the White House. My furnishings imbued my office with a distinctly nautical air. My family and I lived on Kent Island, Maryland, a small fishing community in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. I entered the world in Texas, but I'm a Florida boy at heart, long drawn to the mysteries and beauty of the sea. Fishing, scuba diving, seeing the sun glinting off the waves, those were my guilty pleasures. My wife Jennifer and I tried to be on the water every weekend, if we could swing it. Since I couldn't be on Kent Island all the time, I figured I would bring Kent Island to my office. I had pictures of my wife and daughters, as well as seascapes painted by my father-in-law, who had been a fine amateur artist in his youth. A wooden ship's wheel hung on the opposite wall. I also had something you'd probably never find on most people's desks, a hand grenade. It scared the hell out of most visitors. At a glance, most civilians would not perceive that it had been rendered safe by some of my explosive ordnance disposal buddies in Afghanistan. You would have to actually unscrew the blasting cap to see the empty guts that had once held the explosives. I kept it as a reminder of how fragile and violent life can be. One early morning, while I reviewed a proposal from DHS, my administrative assistant poked her head into my office to tell me that I had 2 guests waiting for me in our reception area. It was early 2009. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I was only on my first cup of coffee. I remember staring blankly into the swirls of my coffee, waiting for one of my classified computer systems to fire up, wishing I didn't have unexpected visitors. The encryption that governed some of the technology I used was ridiculously secure, and it often took me 10 minutes to pull up a single email. My assistant knocked on my door again and introduced me to Jay Stratton and his colleague, whom I'll call Rosemary Kane. Looking up from my coffee, I saw a serious male in his mid-30s, clean-shaven, with piercing eyes. Jay looked familiar, but I hadn't met him before. He wore a fine suit, but seemed a bit out of place in it. Instinctively, I pegged him as a guy who'd been more comfortable with a machine gun and a bandolier around his chest. Picking out a fellow operator is a game for those of us who've done the work. Something goes awry when one of us dons a suit. It's kind of like forcing a German Shepherd into a doggy tuxedo sweater. They can wear it, but it's not really natural.
You're muted.
I'm muted. Luis Elizondo, guys, I'll put a link in the description to the book. You know, it's out right now, August 20th. You heard us chatting about it. I want to thank Pavel and Clint here for hanging out and talking about this. I really appreciate you guys coming. Don't forget to check out their channels. Why don't you guys each shout out, you know, your own stuff, and that way I don't butcher it. Pavel, you go first, man.
I thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you, Clint. I hope we do this again soon.
Y'all should connect, dude. Y'all should do something.
100%.
Cool. That'd be so cool. Yeah. You can find me on Psicoactivo Podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and on X, you can find me as Pavel Ibarrameda. I post a lot of different stuff there, so find me there and we can talk.
Oh, yeah.
Cool, Pavel. Likewise, it was great meeting you too. And anybody who's interested, you can just find me on Nightshift over on YouTube. That's kind of where my central base of operations. I'm on Twitter, or X, but I don't use it very often. So Nightshift on YouTube is the best place.
Oh yeah. Well, look, I also want to thank the mods for just being awesome and taking the chat. We had a lot of people watching today, so thank you guys to everyone who tuned in and hung out with us. There's a lot in there. I tried to have everything organized and assets and move this along. And I like this. I like organization. So it went very smooth. Thank you guys. You guys were so awesome. So please, guys, go check out Pavel and Clint's stuff. If you're not already subscribed, please go do that. And again, just thank you to the chat. And thank you to the mods again, Allie, Justin, Brookers, Jessica, Heiser, Daniel, everybody. And so thank you to everyone watching. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. All right, guys. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all.
Peace.